Hallo miteinander, I'm Gish86 and this is Hell after freezing over. Snake Rattle and Roll has one of the most unreasonably hard endgames that I've ever come across, and there's one reason for this that comes before all the others: ice physics. Every surface on level 9 and beyond is fiendishly slippery. You see, even without that, a lot of people would say that Snake Rattle and Roll has bad controls. I don't. I think they are difficult to understand and hard to master. But now they're even being tampered with. And I was too rushed and reckless there. Should have waited for a better opportunity. So once more about those controls. At this point, you've probably gotten really comfortable with them. So this far in, the game just throws everything you've learned out the window. Sure, other games have ice levels too, but they're rarely ever designed to be the hardest of them all. This video will be the perfect example for why this should never be so in a game. Right here isn't just where the Pibblies spawn, but there's also an Icefoot present. The Icefoot is the stronger version of the Bigfoot, and they are very difficult to kill, because of that dark, ominous secret I've been hinting at again and again. If you fail to hit them for just a second and they stop blinking, they will regain full health. We might have been able to destroy that one, but believe me, this is going to cause a huge problem for us. I will go so far to say that it might even become the hugest problem of them all. The Pibblies in both levels 9 and 10 are Pibblecopters. Yes, they're using modern flight technology to evade us now. It's simply not fair. You don't actually need that many to beat level 9, so we're going to talk more about them later on. For now, let's talk more about the icy ground we're dealing with. When fighting the Icefoot, you already saw that we were slipping and sliding quite a bit. That was on flat ground. We are now on slopes. On these goddamn demonic slopes. They will drag you towards the direction they're descending to, and not just a little bit, but very powerfully so. You can just barely outrun this effect, and if you actually stop struggling and let go, you will shoot off immediately. The slopes are somewhat comparable to the corns in level 7, but you're still allowed to jump. So, level 9 was already pretty difficult, but compared to level 10, it is only the warm-up. Really, level 10 despises us. It despises the world and all of humanity. The start of it doesn't even seem too bad, but of course, that don't mean anything. It not being so bad doesn't of course stop me from impaling myself, nope. And I almost fell off again. Really, you have to be careful with your jumps. If you happen to do one while a slope is dragging you, that jump will have additional momentum to it, and you might be flung who knows where. That sounds pretty bad, if it happens unintentionally, but for some jumping puzzles you must use this kind of boost. In time, we'll get to those, but right now we've arrived at another Pibbly dispenser. It's once again guarded by an Icefoot. This one we are not going to fight, it's simply too dangerous. Instead we're going to sit on this safe spot, the line of 4 squares here, as we can still reach the Pibblecopters there. At least some of them. The dispenser likes to shoot them in completely impossible locations. I've had attempts at this where I would farm for more than 3 minutes here. I would just get so unlucky. The Pibblecopters would bundle up over a pit completely unreachable, and if 3 of them are on screen, the dispenser will stop shooting. If that ever happens, you have no choice but to leave your safe spot and move in a way that the existing Pibblies are scrolled off screen. Leaving that safe spot can go terribly wrong. If that Icefoot ever lands directly on you, say goodbye to your segments. But luckily, that never happened to us. Everything went absolutely perfectly, and we even got an extra life out of it, that we kept for about 10 seconds. Hooray! This happens to be one of the spots I was talking about earlier, where you need the slopes for a boosted jump. You can't do it any other way, and it's really tough to get going, but we made it. However, we can't really celebrate about this because it means we've reached the second part of the level, the one that is so notorious. And I call bullshit on that. Squished in midair, how does that even work? Never mind. About that second half, among Snake Rattle and Roll enthusiasts, it's so famous it even has its own nickname, the Stairway to Hell. The maneuvers that it makes you do are simply absurd, and every tiny mistake costs you a life. Just like that one. I really shouldn't sit there. I don't know why I never remember that it's not safe there. It's not a nice place, unless you like meteors on your noggin. Right over here is another part that is really troublesome for me. You have to jump around the corner and it's very, very tight. It's about this point where the game starts really feeling like an early one by Rare. It pulled off its mask to reveal what looks like a Battletoad. And finally it's come into view. Up there is the actual stairway. First time you ever get to it, it will be a complete disaster. The second time you get to it, it will be a complete disaster. Be prepared to get very well acquainted to it until you can pass it. At first, those jumps really don't look like a whole lot, but stabilizing yourselves on the platforms and staying on them is incredibly finicky. The first few steps are usually the ones that give me the most trouble, because you have to make them in one go. Once you've reached about the 4th step, slipping up means you die from falling damage and you will respawn up there. That may not be all that great, but anything that doesn't set you back helps. Besides, we have the lives to spare. Geronimo! Oh yeah, that stunt was fit for Hollywood, wasn't it? Well, we've done it. We have conquered the stairway to hell, and level 10 is over. Now there's just one more obstacle in our way. One that you will find in most games, the final boss. Rattle may have successfully made it to the moon, but what is this? The King of the Ice Feet has made it there before him. We can't have that. We must dispose of this rogue. It's really a shame. He was a very nice guy once who dreamed of creating the first basketball team for Footland, but none of the other feet wanted to join. He simply couldn't understand why, so he grew bitter, resentful, and finally became a tyrant to his own kind. It's such a tragedy. Now there's a few things that you need to know about the scenario that you're seeing. First of all, the moon also has ice physics, and they're even stronger than in the previous levels. And secondly, because it is the moon, it also has low gravity. Your jumps will go very high and feel all wonky to control. You even bounce a little just for lashing out your tongue, it's very obnoxious. But the worst part of it all is that the King of the Ice Feet is the strongest of his kind. He has a huge amount of health. And he also has that instant regeneration. If you run into him, get squished, or simply fail to keep up, your assault was pointless. Now I won't hold back here. This guy is the worst. I loathe him. In comparison, even the stairway to hell isn't all that bad. And the thing is, we're really not doing so well. We've just once again lost our streak, and we've even lost our first continue before. Do you remember when I said that my sister never quite beat this game? It was only because of this. It's a real problem. You have to have a lot of stamina. You must mash that B button like a maniac. Really, you've got to murder it with the fury of 1,000 fingers. And they will get sore. We're all just human beings. We've just started what seems to be a pretty good streak. You might have noticed that we were always starting from the same spot. That is because if you start down there, the foot will move on a very straightforward path for a while, and it is pretty easy to follow it. That is until you reach the point where the 2 meteors drop. Another problem that me and my sister had with this part was that we weren't even sure what our objective was. I mean, this is not like a modern game where you have a quest log or objectives popping up. It really doesn't tell you anything. She was just attacking that ice foot and it seemingly never got her anywhere. If you don't know about that whole regeneration bit, it just seems like it will never die, but you've just gotta keep hitting it. We've been staying on the foot's tail for a while now, but we weren't very accurate. We're simply not getting those hits in that we need. And that's our second continue down. We've been reduced to the 9 lives that we have started the game with. But with how things are going, it really wouldn't make a difference. We could have 1,000 lives, we'd lose them at this rate. But no, that's not how winners think. We're not going to crumble. We're going to put all our willpower into this one assault. And yes, we have done it! The King of the Ice Feet is dead, the moon belongs to Snake kind, and after stepping into this UFO, we have finally completed Snake Rattle and Roll. It was a tough nut to crack. So it's only appropriate that we're getting a very impressive ending for our valiant efforts, right? Right? Nah, it's barely anything. You've got to remember that we're still in the NES era. That's how it was back then. So, in the end, how does Snake Rattle and Roll fare? It's a pretty cool and imaginative game, for the duration of 8 levels. If I had to describe the last 3 levels in one word, it would be yes, that sound that can barely be attributed to a human being is truly the best way to sum up the endgame of Snake Rattle and Roll. Really, did they have to ramp it up so ludicrously? In a way, yes they did. It's only because the game is so difficult that beating it really means as much as it does. If it didn't reach such an absurd climax, it would be so much more forgettable. So if you ask me, it's perfectly alright if games have a little bit of in them. Snakes in Space, by the way, was never made, but there is something that comes very close to it. We're going to take a look at it in the bonus episode of this LP. As one final little tidbit, I'm going to show you how to cheat against the final boss. The secret is using a turbo controller. I mean, look at these numbers. Is that still legit? I've already kind of answered that question. I really don't believe it is. You're not meant to be able to attack that fast. This doesn't actually work with all turbo controllers. Some are so fast that it's just like holding down the button. And if you do hold down the button, your snake will simply keep its mouth open and not lash out. The ineffectiveness of this is only exceeded by how dumb it looks. So, that's it for this time. A painful journey has come to its end. It might have been the hardest game that I've LP'd so far, or at least one of the hardest. But you know what? I don't regret doing it one bit, and I hope you didn't regret watching it. I'm Gish86, this was Snake Rattle and Roll, and next time we'll take a look at the even more obscure sequel. Bis bald!